Hey guys, welcome to CX Nation webisode number 1. I'm Brian, coming to you from CX Nation headquarters, our backyard, sunny California. You're probably wondering why we're talking about gluing tubulars right now. Well, the reason is, one, it's warm, and the glue dries faster if it's warm out, and two, you want to be prepared for the cyclocross season, right? So we're gluing these in June. Okay, first thing what I'm going to do here is I got a Dugast Rhino tubular that I just actually blew out last year, but I had it new tube put in, and we have new tape all around it, courtesy of tiresdirect.com. And what I've been doing is stretching this out a little bit on just a spare rim laying around. That'll make it easier to mount onto the rim once we're ready. So I filled it up with air, it kind of naturally rolls it out like that. The next thing I'm going to do is take my acid brush. I use acid brushes. You can get them at your local hardware store, 1/2 inch. These are 36 in a pack. They're relatively inexpensive, and that's what I'm going to use to paint the glue onto the tubular. There's a lot of brush right here that we don't really need, so I'm going to cut a small portion of it off, just into the garbage can there. What I like to use is the Victoria Mastic Professional one. Got this, cyclocrossworld.com sells it, and I actually like the tubes better rather than the big jar because it's easier to paint onto the tubular and onto the rim. So what I've done is I've just poured a little of the glue into the cap, and it makes it easier to paint on. Now, some of you are probably asking, well, what about this Belgian tape? Stu also sells this at Cyclocross World. I've used this before, but on the shallower rims, the Mavic Reflex, what I have right here, it takes up a lot of space. So that tends to push the tire a little bit further out. So with these ones, I tried it last year, it didn't work, so I'm not going to use the tape with these ones, with this particular rim, but say like the new Zip 303s that we have here, I will use the tape because they have a real deep kind of rim, and it still allows for the tubular to fit inside of that. So no tape for this one. So what I usually like to do is start right at the valve, so you just go right around and just start painting on the glue. And I just dab it on like this, and just start painting nice thin layer. We're going to do multiple layers, so this takes like probably 3 days to finish up. So we just paint this on. You can see how we get little strands and stuff right here. That's why I like the tube better, because we don't have those strands. So we'll just keep painting on. Okay, now that we have added glue to the tire all the way around, nice thin layer, we're going to move on to the rim here. I just put the rim in a truing stand. It makes it a lot easier when you're laying a thin layer of glue down. And I always start at the valve hole. Again, just as your reference point, you start at the valve hole, you get all the way around, and you'll know where you started, and you'll be done. So I'll put a thin layer of this, and then we just let it dry, come back tomorrow. Okay, so just adding a thin layer onto the rim. Okay, we're back. Day 2, webisode number 1, CX Nation, live from CX Nation headquarters, Santa Rosa, California. I'm Brian. And just as a quick review, what we did yesterday is we got a Dugast tubular blown out from last year. We don't want to throw this away. This is like $120 or something like that. So I sent it back to a place in Florida called Tire Alert. They put a new tube in and got some new base tape down, which is very nice, perfect for gluing. We've got our rim right here. Now for this particular rim, this Mavic Pro, I'm not using the Belgium tape. I'll use the Belgium tape, the thick tape that you can use with glue on the deeper dish 303s from Zip. Works well on those, but I just don't like using it because it takes up too much room, and then I don't get much glue contact between the tubular and the rim on this one. So, got our acid brushes here. Remember I said we can get these at any hardware store. I usually trim off a little bit just because these brushes are too long. It's easier to spread the glue like that. I don't know if I talked about, but stretching the tubular. You want to stretch this out a little bit. It'll definitely help on day 3 tomorrow when we go to put it actually on the rim. And I just have an old clincher rim here, and this is actually a road tube that I'm stretching out for another bike. Stretch it out for, I don't know, a week if you want, 2 weeks, as long as you want. Just pop it on there, fill it up with air. It comes off really simple, just like that, and you can pop it back on. Helps out when you're stretching. Get onto the rim. Okay, just like yesterday, all we're going to do is put in another thin layer on both the tubular and the rim. I like to start out at the valve stem, so I know, use it as a guide. And same, I'll start out at the valve hole on the rim. I'll just start spreading the glue out. Here we go. Okay, so we have the tubular, nice thin layer around that on the tire, and then we put a nice thin layer around the rim and let it dry, and we'll come back tomorrow for day 3. Okay, here we are, day 3 of CX Nation's webisode number 1, how to put on a tubular tire. This is usually the day that everybody fears the most because you actually have to put the tire onto the rim, and that could be literally a sticky situation. So, what I'm going to do now is put on another thin coat right onto the tubular, or excuse me, onto the rim, and then we'll go from there. Just a nice thin layer. Got our acid brush again. Okay, so I have the thin layer onto the rim, and I got the old clothes on because you might get some glue all over you. I take these gloves off, get rid of them because they won't help me too much. In fact, they'll get stuck in between the tire and the rim. And then I take the tire, let all the air out. So I just put a thin layer onto this onto the rim, and the biggest part right here that I always think people have trouble with is actually getting, well, 1, getting the tire onto the rim, but 2, getting the valve stem centered. So you want to really work on getting the valve stem centered first and foremost. Get it pressed on there. And then what we want to do is start from the top and just start stretching it down. And this is where your actual pre-stretching is going to help you. I mean, you just got to muscle it on there. Most people get intimidated by this, but it's just a matter of getting some muscle into it. Try to get on as best as possible. And now what we're going to do to finish it off, we got our compressor here. We're going to fill this up with about 60 to 80 psi of air. And this will allow us to work our way around and actually center it up, because we need to have it centered on the rim. Just take a look at it, look all around. It looks pretty much centered. You don't want to see the base tape showing. The valve stem is straight. And now we're going to leave this inflated at 60 to 80 psi overnight, 24 hours, something like that. Make sure it's stuck. And then you want to store your tubulars in some place that's cool and hopefully dry. Some of you back east have basements and stuff. Might not be the driest place, but out here in California, no basements. So usually I put mine in the bedroom closet right next to the wife's wedding dress. She seems to like that. They do pretty well on there. So that's it. There it is. Tubular on, accomplished, ready to race. Get out there and race, and we'll see you at the next cyclocross venue across the country.